Okay, now I'd like to talk to you about the idea of the enrollment or re-enrollment agreement. Again, I'm not a lawyer, and the laws may be different in your state, province, or country. And so I would always tell you, consult with legal counsel before you present a contract. But the idea of contract law is, as I understand it, that somebody agrees to provide a service or a particular good in return for a commitment to pay something else. And the idea is that there's a time dimension. In other words, you can't make a commitment to provide something in perpetuity. It will normally end either on your death or some specific time frame. So normally, for example, if you rent a house, if you enroll a child in a college and you sign an agreement, the agreement is for a specific period of time. Now, there are contracts that have an implication that they are continuing. For example, you could have an employee, and if you don't enter into a formal employment agreement that says this is an employment agreement that goes from this date to this date, there could be an implication that unless you give them formal notice to the contrary, that the agreement is automatically renewed. So I'm suggesting that when it comes to an enrollment or re-enrollment agreement, that you think about things this way. The first is, I believe that in the case of a Montessori school, you really don't want to be offering people transitional enrollment. What I mean is, come when you want to, stay as long as you want. There may be reasons why you might want to accept a child for the last 2 months of the school year, or that you know that the child is going to be leaving during the school year, and you might want to modify a standard agreement in some way by saying that, we are aware that the family is going to be moving at some point during the year, and in the event that happens, this is how the contract is changed. So in the case of a Montessori school, I would recommend to you that first off, in developing your enrollment or re-enrollment agreement, you understand that the agreement is going to cover a few things. The first is it's going to cover the idea that the family is going to enroll their child in your school for a specific period of time. Normally, that's going to be a school year or the remainder of the school year. And it could be that a family knows they're going to be transferred out of town during the school year, and you may choose to enter into a modified agreement. But I'm talking about the standard agreement that you want to present to families when they enroll. So they're enrolling in the school, and I would suggest to you that you're not selling your school by the hour, by the day, or by the month, even if you allow people to pay your tuition in monthly installments. Instead, what they're doing is they're reserving a space in the school for a specific period of time. And the idea is, and you'll have to use whatever language seems right to you and your legal counsel, but the idea is that in return for reserving a space, they agree to pay the following amount of money in the following way. And usually you'll offer them an agreement for each option. You could have 3 different contracts. More typically, you're going to have an agreement that is going to offer them an option. It's going to start by saying, we enroll a specific child, not an open-ended agreement where you can swap one child for another child. We enroll the following child in the school for the school year of, let's say, 2017, 2018. And in consideration for reserving that spot for my child for that school year, we as the parents agree to pay the following amount of money. There will also be various agreements that they're going to sign, such as permission to get the child emergency medical attention in the event that the child is ill or injured and the parents cannot be contacted. There might be other agreements built into the agreement, such as permission to use photographs or video of the child in advertisements or promotion and so forth. The agreement sample that I'm giving you, you can modify as you wish and use it just as a starting point, but it's worked well for us in our own lab school over the years, and it worked for us before we founded the Newgate School at the Barry School for many years, and many other schools have found that its variations on this have worked for them. Your agreement should be somewhat overwhelming. You don't want it to be a very simple agreement that only has a few sentences on it. The reason for that is, first, you need to be sure you cover all the bases, everything that's important. The second is you need to make sure the parent understands the seriousness of what they're asking you to do. From your end, you are going to reserve a spot in the school and deny it to anyone else that might want it. So that means that sooner or later your class is going to be full and you're going to have to say to families, I'm so sorry, we don't have room. And normally these agreements are going to be entered into the winter before the new school year starts. So many, many months in advance. And this could be either the initial agreement or it could be a re-enrollment agreement. Now, again, if you have a spot in the middle of your big break in the summer and someone approaches you about admission, obviously you're going to admit them, and you may even admit them during the school year. You can always modify these agreements to reflect a last-minute enrollment or a mid-year and partial year enrollment. But the idea is that normally they're applying in advance. They're asking you to reserve this spot, and you're making commitments. You're making commitments to teachers. You're making commitments to buy certain equipment. You're doing a lot of things on their behalf and denying that space to another family's child. From that point of view, you need to know that the family to which you're offering this enrollment is committed to you. And that's the idea of the agreement. They know that they have a spot in the school. You're not going to suddenly pull the rug out from under them. And you know that they're committed to paying a specific amount of tuition in a specific manner. In other words, a specific time arrangement of when payments will be made to you. Now, look, contracts are really only as good as the will and the goodwill of the people who enter into them. You cannot force a teacher to work for you if they decide to leave you. You cannot force a child to stay in the school if the parents decide that they want to remove them. You can, on the other hand, if you choose to, hold on to money that parents may have paid as an initial deposit. It could be non-refundable. And you also may have the right to enforce the contract, if you structure it the way we're recommending, over the course of the entire school year, even if the family decides, you know what, we found something better. Again, I want you to think this thing through, and I want you to do what you feel is right for your school and what your attorneys believe is appropriate under the laws where you exist. But the idea is that you're making a commitment for your teachers and your school to serve this child for a year. A family could be unhappy with you, and you could be unhappy with a family, and either one of you may be able to end the relationship, and you may be able to part amicably. You may have another child to take their spot, but I want you to think about what would happen in your new school if 10 parents decide 3 months in that they decide that they don't want to stay. You could be out of money very quickly and unable to continue operation, and all the time and effort you've put in could wash right down the drain. You cannot make parents commit to continue with the school. And if they want to, they can basically say, you know what, sue me. I'm not continuing with the school. You have failed to live up to the promises you made to me, and I choose not to pay you any more money. And then it's up to you if you're willing to go to court and argue this out in court. The point of the contract is not that it guarantees that parents will honor the commitment. It is simply that you enter into a contract that is legally binding and potentially enforceable. What that means is, should 10 parents decide that because a particular teacher leaves the school and they're unhappy, you may have an agreement that you will provide them with an education, but you cannot guarantee that Jonathan Wolf will be their child's teacher. That can't be part of the agreement. The parent may feel it is, but that cannot be specified in the agreement because you don't have control over it. Your commitment as a school is you will educate these children and keep them safe and do all the other things that are spelled out in your enrollment agreement, which is the contract. If 10 families were to leave you, you probably really wouldn't have any choice but to hire an attorney and to go after these 10 parents. By the way, if the parents decide that you have done something wrong, that you have misrepresented what you are providing, it's the agreement that they're going to use as the basis for coming after you. What I'm trying to say is your enrollment agreement is really, really important. You want to make sure that it is well written. You want to make sure it is comprehensive, that is absolutely consistent with the laws where you live, and that it is serious enough in its appearance that a parent will understand that in entering into it and signing up, you're making a serious commitment. They're not simply saying, I will stay for a few weeks, see if I like it, and leave if I want to. You want to get across from the beginning that they are making a commitment.